And what a powerful song that is. When you think of the words, you make all things work together for my future and my good. What a fitting song as we start this conversation right now on what we're going to call the 10 Commandments of the family. But really what we want to do is highlight this whole concept of scripts. You see, this is not a conversation about sins, right? This is a conversation about the different influences that maybe we have taken for granted or subtly have kind of influenced us throughout our life. And I'm excited to have this conversation with you, but more specifically, because it's actually with you, excited to chat with you today. This is Pastor Darren, our counseling pastor. We're excited to have this conversation together. But Pastor Darren, I'm pumped to be chatting with you today, partly because I think you're brilliant, and partly because I see Christ in the way that you live your life, and it's such an important piece of leadership. Like I want to follow people who follow Christ, and I see that in you. And so today, when we talk about these 10 commandments that Peter Scazzero talks about, no pressure, but I'm leaning on you for some like serious godly wisdom. I hope you're okay with that.
Thank you very much. Mate, I was going to say the same with you, really. It'll be a great conversation together.
Perfect. I like it. So check this out. Boom. The 10 commandments of your family.
Yeah.
Now, again, this might be these aren't necessarily, it's not a specific list. Like it's not like designed like these are the 10 commandments of your family, but this is kind of like a guidebook, highlighting some common ones. Would that
Very
be how you would
ones.
explain that?
Yep, I would agree with that.
Perfect. And so why don't you start us off? What's the first kind of commandment that kind of, or script that would influence kind of our family life?
Absolutely. Well, the first one, as you've just brought up here, money is a common one. A lot of people would say that money is our source of security, our best source of security.
Right.
That the more money you have, the more important that you are, the more power you have, and the more prestige you have, the more influence you have.
Right.
It just goes hand in hand as per the script. And lastly, the more money that you have, the more you've made it, the more you've proven yourself, that the more you just have the right to be, I am the man, or the woman.
Right, of course.
Right. But yeah, money is one of those strongholds in our life that we just assume that the more you have, the better it is.
Absolutely. Now, again, what we're not saying is we're not saying that money is a sin. Like money isn't a sin. What we're saying is that in our kind of family of origin, the way that we were raised, the way our parents handled topics such as money impacts and influences the way that we as grown-ups will handle money. For better or for worse, it all applies, right? It all impacts, right? And so the next one that we want to talk about today is conflict, right? And my family was perfect. I don't know if you had conflict, but
I could speak for days about this one.
yeah. But when it comes to conflict, now maybe you can see where you would relate on this particular screen. So avoid conflict at all costs. Maybe that's the story, that's the narrative that's being told in your family. Maybe the script that they would believe could be don't get people mad at you. Yep. Like no matter what you do, keep your head on straight, don't show any emotion, don't show any kind of weaknesses. Like let's just grind it and get it through. Don't let
peacekeeper.
The peacekeeper.
Switzerland.
Yes. Totally. I don't know anything about Switzerland, but we will assume that you're right. The next one, loud, angry, constant fighting is normal. That kind of like everybody communicates with a yell, right? Like maybe that's your family's story. And again, not saying that any of these things are necessarily sins. This isn't a conversation about sins. This is a conversation about scripts and our ability to say, okay, slow down. Holy Spirit, speak to me, right? And that's my prayer for you when you're watching this. Just thinking through in what ways has money impacted the way I am? In what ways does conflict impact the way that I am? And again, these could be very good things, but maybe it's negative. The point is, if we're going to be a follower of Christ, sometimes we're actually following other things.
That's it. You've said it beautifully. We just need to slow down and just go back and assess what we've been given, how beneficial that is in our life. Does it still suit where we're at right now? Right. There might be some things that we have to change. There might be some things that are fine the way they are. But it's being intentional about looking and thinking.
Your accent makes everything sound better. It's just so good.
Christy used to say the same.
Okay, number 3, I'm giving you this one. I don't even want to do it. That's yours.
Okay. Well, sexuality is a big thing.
Of course.
And some of the taboo things in families is it's not spoken about openly.
Absolutely.
That it happens, but let's not go there.
Yeah.
And it's a hard one. It'd definitely be from a parent now. It's an awkward one hearing from a kid, and now being a parent, I get that, definitely. Yeah. The next one, society would say that it's okay for men to be promiscuous, but women have to be chaste or they have to be restrained.
Right.
And that's sad, that there's no evidence for men who should be like this.
Right.
I would challenge that one definitely. And again, sexuality in the marriage, or let me open this up a bit more, communication in a marriage as well will come easily, is kind of a script. But we all know, I know in my marriage, and I'm sure you in yours, that communication, it needs to be an ongoing conversation. It just doesn't happen. It's the intentionality of developing this, of working with it, and sexuality the same.
Totally. I think the script that we've learned about sex as it relates, like we've learned a lot about it from our family, but I think honestly, the way we have approached it, or to be really real, like not approached the subject as a church has probably also influenced it, right? And so we have a lot of people where, again, obviously sex is not a sin, but the way that they process sex and their sexuality have gotten themselves in this really confusing spot. And so understanding the scripts that are behind what we believe, why we believe what we believe is extraordinarily important. Yes. And so, although this may feel a little bit awkward to talk about sex at church, I do want to encourage you, like, pray about this, because this is another one. You can't just avoiding something doesn't mean that you're going to figure it all out.
No, it certainly doesn't go away either. It's there front and center, and we need to think about it. We need to talk about it with wise counsel.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wise counsel, our counseling pastor. Perfect. Number 4, grief and loss. Let's look at this together. Sadness is a sign of weakness. Every family experiences grief and loss differently. Every human experiences grief and loss differently. We have different rules of engagement when it comes to grief and loss, typically when it comes to how we were raised. Perhaps you weren't allowed to express that. You weren't allowed to be depressed, especially in the evangelical church. Like, we're kind of like, oh my goodness, if anybody says they're depressed, we're ready to cast out demons, when there's a lot of other factors that could be taking place here, right?
That's right.
Get over losses quickly, move on, kind of suppress all your feelings. Like you're a Christian, you should be happy, suppress that. Like that's not freedom, right? And so I am really thankful. You don't know this yet, but I know this. Like, next week you are speaking on this subject, correct?
Yeah. I am, yeah. Great privilege to be asked by Pastor Andy and the team to be able to speak on this. This is very close to my heart, and I've certainly walked through and continue to walk through my own journey with this that will be shared next week.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Again, this is a really great one to process and ask God how that script's impacted your life. Yeah, number 5.
Number 5. So probably similar to the last one, a different emotion, a very strong emotion, as Pastor Andy said at the beginning of the series, but expressing anger. Yeah. And the catchphrase that we are all told is that anger is dangerous and bad. Right. Can't go there, can't touch that. Yeah. But then you've got these little subpoints that go along. It says, but it's okay to explode in anger to make a point. So as long as it's justified, hey, it's legitimate.
Right.
And also sarcasm, or, the whole passive-aggressive sort of thing. Yeah. Well, that's an acceptable way to release anger or frustration. Yeah. So the meta-narrative, anger's bad, but if you can justify it, well, it's perfectly fine. Right. And especially if I've seen that happening in my parents or in other people that I respect, well, then authenticates my own experience. Yeah. So why do I need to consider that what I'm doing is maybe not right or not according to what the Bible says? Well, everyone else is doing it and my peers have done it, so I can do it.
Yeah, I think it's really important for us to realize that anger and abuse are obviously 2 different things. Abuse, clearly, obviously a sin, not good, wrong, not justifiable. Anger, it's different. It's very different.
It is.
Now, let's look at number 6, shall we? Number 6 is interesting because it's family, and we're talking about family. But there's a lot of different narratives that we believe when it comes to family, such as you owe your parents for all they've done for you, right?
Yes.
Don't speak your family's dirty laundry in public, right? Like let's keep this in the house. We don't want anybody to know.
Yeah.
Duty to the family and culture comes before everything. And again, it's not saying that these things are bad things. This is why I think this list is so helpful, because it's a conversation we don't typically have. And so when it comes to family, finding the ability to ask yourself those hard questions, I think is extraordinarily important in terms of discovering what it looks like to be a holistic, emotionally healthy individual.
Yeah. No, it's true. And when you consider the idea of the church as a family as well, it takes on a different dynamic versus just our biological family. So let's wrestle these issues through together.
Yeah. See? Brilliant. I told you. Number 7, talk to me about relationships.
Well, relationships, as we've been touching on through the whole series, the idea of don't trust people, they'll let you down. I've heard my beautiful daughter say a couple times that, I am a strong, independent woman. And I celebrate that. I do, but sometimes it means, hey, I'm untouchable. I can do life myself. Thank you very much. I don't need your help.
Right.
In terms of, it maybe says I'm weak. It might suggest that I'm weak, and I don't want to do that.
Right.
So maybe I'll jump to number 3 first, but don't show vulnerability. That same sort of thing. And nobody will ever hurt me again.
Right.
I guess when I was reading this, Adam, the first thing that came to mind, and I'm dating myself a little bit, but a song that I'm forgetting the people, I'm forgetting the artist now. Simon Garfunkel. Simon Garfunkel. Oh no. Simon Garfunkel, when they had the song "I'm an Island," and the last couple lines it says, "I'm an island. I'm a rock. I'm an island," and it says, "A rock never feels no pain, and an island never cries."
Right.
And I think that's what the world says. Be strong, be tough, keep pushing through. You can do it. We've got your back. But I'm self-made.
Right.
So, you know what? I would push back on that one as well. Vulnerability is a helpful thing.
Yeah.
At time, we have to be wise about how we do it and when we do it and where we do it. But things like this are important to.
Yeah.
Many times I've heard you preaching and just in conversation together, and your heart that is revealed and open is so special. It helps me. It actually helps me to understand that.
Say that again.
Yeah, it really does help me because I can see your authenticity. I can see your humanness.
Right.
And then I feel that I can take off my mask. If you're being real with me and vulnerable enough to do so, I feel like, well, do you know what? I can actually slide back this mask a little bit and be real with you as well.
Yes.
It's a beautiful synergy.
Yeah, no. Amen. That sounds great. So when relationships, obviously relationships with people, I think relationships with God, like there's certain scripts that are being told there. I think specifically of the subject of like achievement addiction, where it's like if I need to earn the right to be loved by God, I mean to earn the right to be loved by others, but specifically in the Christian church, that's a real one where it's so like real. If I'm not performing at a certain level, then God's not going to love me, and that's completely wrong. Right. Correct. And again, it's the way these scripts can kind of subtly sneak in there and totally distort our reality. Mm-hmm. Number 8, attitudes towards different cultures. And coming out of last year, this is a very relevant topic for us. Only be close friends with people who are like you. Now, this is a fascinating one because this isn't always articulated, but it's often communicated, right? Like, I don't think there's a lot of, in today's day and age, it's not usually like, don't hang out with that kind of person, but instead it's kind of communicated by not ever hanging out with that kind of person, like
you're exempling what you're not saying.
Right. It's subtle, but it's real and it's destructive at the same time. Do not marry a person from another race or culture. Again, sometimes that was very, very clearly communicated in a family. Sometimes it's not clearly communicated, but it is very much communicated all at the same time, right? Certain cultures, races are not as good as mine. Again, these things, I'm throwing these in the sin category. Some of them weren't, but these are pretty downright awful. But when it comes to some of these things, like, that's why I love Christianity, because there's no place for these in the Christian Bible I read.
So true.
Right?
I agree with you.
That's not how Jesus functions. That's not how God works. And so, but that doesn't mean that we don't actually walk that out in our day-to-day lives. And so recognizing that some of these things that you may have grown to think that these are okay, they're not actually okay. And it's doing the deep work, taking out the layers where we can kind of recognize some of these things.
So well put.
Number 9.
Yeah. So success to us means a lot of different things for every person. But getting into the best schools, having lots of money that we talked about earlier, or being married and having kids. These are just ideas of success, depending on your family, that you might have ingrained yourself.
Totally.
But I think what I would suggest is the facade of success is the most critical thing that we would go with. On the outside, as long as you think that I'm a success, and as long as I can help you understand that I'm a success based on who I am and what I've got, love me, accept me, help me, support me, encourage me, do all this.
Right.
But success is not just a facade. Success to be fulfilling and satisfying really needs to be so much deeper than just schools, money, marriage, kids, happy family, the whole bit.
Totally. And I think obviously this is right where achievement addiction comes into to play again. Yeah. But oftentimes success is also where we look to find peace. Like we get this idea that like we sometimes interchangeably use the term I am successful for I am whole, or I am being my whole person. And sometimes we tell ourselves if I'm well educated, I got a family, I'm married, I've got money, then I'm doing fairly well. Well, the truth is Jesus is the only thing that really, really changes everything, right? And so, so good. Number 10, we'll wrap up with this one. Feelings and emotions, right? Even the fact that we're doing this emotionally healthy spirituality. For some of people watching this today, you might think this has been a complete waste of time, right? But that's, again, partly probably created by some scripts that you've learned and walked through throughout the years. You are not allowed to have certain feelings is something we would often say. Even sometimes in the church world, we would subtly kind of communicate some of those things. And again, not intentionally, but sometimes just in an effort to communicate the joy that Jesus brings, we inadvertently are telling people, well, you can't actually be sad. You're not allowed to grieve. You need to show people the joy of Christ. And that's not fair. That's not real. And that's not even biblical, right?
But it's common.
But it's common. Your feelings are not important. Don't have your feelings. Suppress your feelings. Reacting with your feelings without thinking reacting to your feelings without thinking is okay. Like we get this idea that either A, don't listen to our emotions, or we have people who B, only listen to their emotions and they're making all their feelings or decisions based off that. Both sides of that pendulum can get you into trouble, right? And what I find fascinating as we go through these things, the vast majority aren't sins. They're just scripts that we learn as we kind of grow and develop from our family of origin, our parents, our workplace, our church. It all kind of combines to make us who we are. Any last final thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I think you're very right, Adam. And one of the things I find, I'm going to date myself a little bit, but suggesting that I'm a Gen Xer, I think where I've found is that Gen X and everything backdated before that, so boomers and everything else, I think we learned about our scripts, we learned to follow the rules.
Right.
And the whole follow thing was so important. Yeah. So I've grown up thinking if someone in authority says something, I just need to do that. Right. I didn't necessarily think for myself. So, feelings aren't important, you just do. Right. Gen Y and beyond, and again, I'm very much generalising, but have learnt to challenge the rules. So I stand on one side of the fence and I look at my friends and some of my kids and everything and think, well, why aren't you just following like I did? We were right. Right. And you're wrong. But I've had to stop and think, you know what? I don't think either are right. I don't think for me just mindlessly following the rules was right. And I don't think the idea of just challenge the rules is right either. I think all of us maybe need to be a little bit more intentional about it's not just the what, but the why behind the what. That let's just slow down and unpack. What did my family think about certain things? What were the scripts that either my family and or society is bringing up about relationships, about marriage, about singleness, about schooling, about money, some of the things that we've already gone through. Just what has been said. Also, dig down a little bit into what did my family convey to me about different churches, different denominations, different faiths. All of this is so important. I think it was Socrates who said, the life unexamined is not worth living. And I think that's so important, a great philosophy piece for us to think about. But I think Paul as well backs that up. I look in Ephesians 5:15, and he says, pay careful attention to how you walk. So don't walk with the unwise, but walk with the wise. So, Paul and Socrates were kind of saying something very similar. Just don't live life, just go through and I've made it. It's be intentional. You talked about worldviews. I've heard it said before that we create our worldview. So based on our family of origin and our life experience reinforces our worldview. So we create our worldview, but then our worldview creates us. Talking about the scripts, we then live out the worldview that we have. But just like a sieve, what a sieve does really is it separates the wanted elements from the unwanted material. And I think for us to intentionally go back and use a sieve to do this and separate what we need to keep from what we don't. But I think for you and I, both of us would say that sieve is the Word of God. That sieve is everything that's inside the Bible contextualized to what God's saying to us in this generation. So let's use that as we go about our life. So just to go back, one last thing, Adam, is we have a family of origin. We have parents, we have guardians, we have maybe grandparents, we have step-parents, whoever we have. The fifth commandment in the Bible is honour your father and mother. And that is still so important, irrespective of whether we go back and pull some of this stuff apart and say it's not appropriate, it's not important for me right now. It says honour your father and mother, and I believe that is still very much biblical, that we need to. And yet at the same time, Jesus himself said, come follow me. And it's holding those things in tension. It's honouring our father and mother, but following Jesus.
That's so good. It's a good, real good thoughts. So we would encourage you as you've kind of watched this deep dive. We hit a lot of topics. This list isn't exhaustive.
No,
it's not the list, but it was just enough to get you thinking. If you wanted to, maybe somebody wanted to talk to you because you are our counselor, clinical counselor here on staff. How can they get a hold of you?
If you want to check out the website first. You can either get it through the GT Church website, so just go to gt.church and you'll find a link to the counselling centre under About Us, or you can just go www.gtcounselling.ca, so counselling with 2 L's. So you can do that, find out a bit about me, find out about our team, Steph and Tiffany. Stephanie and Tiffany are amazing as they participate in the counselling centre, dealing with children and with youth. So between the three of us, we have the whole spectrum covered.
That's awesome.
And we don't know everything. Well, maybe the girls do, but I don't. But yeah, get in touch with us. We would love to work through this journey with you.
That's great. Darren, thanks for the conversation today. Thanks for watching, and look forward to your sermon next week on grief and loss. And
Thank you very much,
thanks for being with us.
Awesome.